You're
So this begins the inking, the live inking on Ustream, and joining us, I'm Tom Merritt, of course, the writer of TenState. Len Peralta is here with us. Hello, Len.
Hey, what's up, Tom?
And we also have Jeff Kanata decided to
Yeah.
come along. Thank you, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about getting inked. You guys are inking me, right?
Yes, we're going to tattoo you from head to
Sweet.
toe
Live inking
with
of
This is the
me.
with
first time I've
page
ever done.
4 of issue 3.
Hey,
Yeah,
it was a big commitment, but I stepped up to the plate.
So if you do want to get
I've never
page 4
inked
of
a
issue,
human being before, so it should be interesting.
yeah, you will have to track down Jeff.
Yeah. It's the
you-
only
it's
place
the
to
only-
figure out that pivotal scene.
That's right.
It's on my arm.
What happens next? I don't know. Find Jeff Kanata. It's the only way you're going to do it. But no, we wanted somebody who was outside the comic to kind of chat with us and hang out. And
Well, I am also a proud supporter.
yes, you are. Thank you
yes.
very much for that, by the way.
And
That
I
was-
assume that every single person at the $20 level, like me, is going to get invited into your house for a personal
yes,
session.
that's right. That's or an equivalent value,
Equivalent value.
which would be like I don't know, a quarter. Or something.
No, this is awesome.
Yeah. So this is the first time. This is like the first real page that we're doing publicly. We've done some. We've done some preview pages, but this is going to be the first one that people are actually going to be able to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start inking. Oh, and maybe I should talk a little bit about the page before I start inking it. The page is from issue 2. It is page 4 of issue 2, and the reason I chose this particular page was because it had all the major characters on it, so it allowed me to draw all the major characters, and it seemed like a really fun little page. It doesn't give away too much information. Um, Obviously, this is there's another challenge happening that we don't really know until I put Tom's words on. We won't really know what's happening on this page. Um, and the other reason I chose it is because it will. This is a kind of page I should be able to do relatively quickly. So rather than spend like 3 hours on an inking session, and
Settle in, folks. Get comfy.
it'll be this should go relatively quick if all things go well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start inking. It looks like people are starting to show up now in the chat.
Yeah. Kudos to
So-
James for being the first one in.
Yes, he should win something.
He should.
you know?
He wins the honors. And B. Purcell right behind him.
Yes, yes.
Place and
So,
show to James
so-
and B.
so-
Purcell.
What we're gonna do is, as people come in, if you have any questions, go ahead, just use the chat. You can talk to Jeff and Tom and myself, and we're just gonna have a good time. I'm actually gonna start inking page 4 of issue 2 right now. So
It's hard to figure out what to call something like this. Because I was mentioning it to Ben, my nephew's interning with me, and I said it's a drawing, and he's like, "So why would you need to stream that for an hour? It's just if you're drawing." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, not that kind of drawing. It's an inking." But then you wanted to be tattooed.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of
I don't know.
ambiguity here.
It's-
Let me ask you this though. So to get to the point we're at now, so Tom, you wrote something that looks often an awful lot like a movie or TV script. Is that right?
yeah. It's I went and looked at a few comic scripts that are out there, and I sort of just ripped off their format.
Yeah. And it's basically the same thing where you see a scene. So you have, whether it's outdoor, or indoor, and you have where it's located, and
Yeah.
who the characters are there, and those who are speaking. And so Len, then you take that, and your layouts are all very impressive. I think just looking at issue 1 and 2, which I have so far, I'm really impressed by your layouts. And so you take that information and you basically work as the visual director for how that scene's going to play out. Is that right?
that's correct. It's sort of like just doing storyboards, and I have some experience doing storyboards, and so yeah, so it's interesting because this is TenState is really, I mean, it is a TV show, right? Like it's about a TV show, but we're treating it like a TV show in how we're approaching it. So this is kind of a fun way of of handling the comic, and I'm glad that visually it's starting to come together and look the way we want it to look, which is
So
pretty cool.
did you do all the pencils digitally as well?
Yes, yes. This is relatively new for me in the past year or so. I usually, I'm a traditional artist, I like to do all the pencils and inks traditionally, but I've changed that as of about August of this past year, where I'm doing everything digitally now.
And
And
what's the tool you're using? Is it?
the the tool I am using is called a Cintiq. It's
Mhm.
a Cintiq 22 inch, and it's it, it was interesting. I thought that by getting a Cintiq, and the difference between a Cintiq, for those who don't know, is that you are actually drawing on the actual monitor, as opposed to a Wacom tablet where you are sort of you have a little pad out to the side, and you're drawing with a pen. This is actually on the monitor as if you're drawing on pen and paper. And so when I started drawing digitally, I thought, oh, this is going to be simple. This is going to be I can make that transition easily, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And it's just like any other tool. It just takes some time to master. And but hopefully that hasn't been showing in the work that I've been doing for TenState, and some of the
Definitely
other work
not.
I've been doing. So,
That's great, man.
uh,
Tom, the 10 State obviously uses 10 as a motif over and over and over again. You guys said you want to do 10 issues,
Yeah.
10 pages apiece.
Yeah.
How hard is it to craft a story that fits so rigorously into that format?
We'll see how the 10 issues thing actually works out in practice. The 10 pages has been a nice limiting factor. It feels like episodic television. Like you've got to get to a cliffhanger. And actually, Len's been really good at holding my feet to the fire. Like in this particular issue, we had an ending, and he's like, I feel like it needs to be a little cliffhangery. And so it made me bring in another element a little earlier than I had, and I think it works really well. So it's a good format to kind of force you to keep the issues interesting and move the story along at the same time. Hopefully the 10 issues will play out the same way. That's a little harder. That's a little more of a moving target to keep an eye on, though. I pulled up the script that's going along with what Len is inking right now. I'm just going to slide it over there. There may be a little delay, so you won't see it right away necessarily, but that's when we were talking about the script, that's what he's looking at. That's all he gets. We're back in the present. They're arguing. Here's what they're going to say.
And then he gets that awesome, visual moment of her pointing at him. It's just so cool.
Yeah, and that's what impresses me the most. And I know Len's good about saying, no, this is a joint effort, but it feels like he's doing all the hard work to me, because I'm like, I don't know. I think these people do something like this, and I'm trying to make a story that makes sense and is intriguing and stuff. But he makes it come alive, and when I look at it, I'm always like floored. I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's what it should look like, and it makes the story make more sense once I see him draw it.
Yeah. How much experience have you had writing fiction before this?
Just amateur stuff. I've self-published a couple of novels, and I do NaNoWriMo every year, National Novel Writing Month, just for fun. But yeah, nothing professional, nothing recognized or recognizable even.
That's so awesome too. And this is obviously the first comic book you've ever written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a lot,
Yeah.
as most of us have.
Right.
And that honestly, that makes a huge difference. Like it would be difficult to write this if you actually didn't know what a comic book. Oh, we're getting a commercial. Is that coming from here?
It's Ustream.
That's awesome. So
we love commercials.
Here's the thing about Ustream that you may or may not know. If you mute the stream, when the commercial comes on, the audio will come out.
You need to hear that commercial, man.
Yeah. Anyway, reading comics.
I'd love to get that commercial in there.
Very important. That's all I'm trying to say. And we apologize. There will be commercials for some of you out there that will interrupt us, but we are recording it. So.
Hey, Len, what's the difference between penciling and inking? A lot of times, you don't get the same guy doing both jobs. So
Yeah. I'm actually, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse that I'm doing both. The difference between penciling and inking, essentially, well, it's interesting. I do, I kind of cut out a step when I'm doing the art. I usually do a rough sketch of where, like, basically like blocking, essentially where people should be, and where everything should go. And then after I do that rough, I start doing the pencils. So the difference between the inking and the pencils is that basically it's just the pencils act for me as a guide. Um, and because I am the one who's inking, I can be a little bit more looser on my pencils, um, because I know that when I get to the inking stage, I can sort of keep drawing, if that makes any sense. Um, Usually, if there were another artist working on this, if there were a penciler and another colorist and stuff, we would leave. My pencils would have to be a lot tighter for him to get what my point is, as far as what I want him to do, and where I need black to go, and and that kind of stuff. Um, so the main difference is that it's just the inks are just or the pencils, I'm sorry, are uh, just a guide, essentially, for me as I go into the next phase of the art. Um, and I use a totally different group of tools to ink digitally than I do to draw. I have this little digital pencil that actually mimics a 2H or 4H pencil, and it gives me that not the synthetic look, the real look that I'm looking for. Because the hardest part, that going back to working in a Cintiq, the hardest part is um, trying to defeat, trying to make it look natural, trying to look so it doesn't look um, like it's a digital drawing. Because while you have a lot of these brushes and you can do so much on in Photoshop, and which is what I'm using. Um, you have to really kind of battle with it to make it look like it's natural.
but we also
Um,
just saw you erase with the ink too, which you wouldn't be able to do on using actual inks, right?
oh, correct. Yes, that's another thing that took me a while, and I'm still learning it as well. Is when you make a mistake, you can just sort of just redo it and start the line all over, which you don't have that luxury. So that actually took me a long time to get over, because obviously when you're working with pen and ink, uh, what you're working with, you if you make a mistake, you just have to either work with it, or you have to white it out, or fix it digitally later. The nice thing about working digitally is that you have that kind of immediate um, feel, and you can go back and change it as much as you want, and that's taken me a little bit of time to get used to. But so I hope that answered the question about what's the difference between inking um and penciling. I don't know.
Yeah,
Did that help?
absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting.
Do you just drop that pencil layer out like that? Like you just
Yes.
when you're
Yes.
done, that just
Yes.
huh?
Yes.
That seems
Everything's
so
on
much easier. Yeah.
everything's on a layer. So, like, the pencils are on a separate layer. As a matter of fact, I get so meta with it, and probably too meta. I'm working on two different comics. I'm working on TenState right now, and I'll put a plug in for my other comic. I'm working on a comic with Bill Corbett of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and Riff Tracks, and we've been working on this. It's actually more of a graphic novel because it's over 100 pages at this point. But um, uh, that I get really super meta with the way that I work, and I actually create like a separate Photoshop file.
What's that?
Oh, I was just saying. I thought you were talking to me. the
Oh, you know what? We that's a quirk of the setup. I muted us on the stream, but I didn't get muted to you. So
Oh, I was like, what?
no one else heard
Um,
that, but you and Ben and Jeff.
okay.
I was saying take the
I,
dogs upstairs because my dog's laying there whining because it's getting close to dinner time.
oh, of course.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's all right. With I was just saying with the meta stuff, I create so many different layers, like so many different Photoshop files. I have a Photoshop file just for the pencils, and then I turn that into a Photoshop file for inks, and then another one for color. I suppose if I wanted to, I could just have one file where everything is in, but I like having that option of going back pencils and editing something there, which I don't. Maybe that's just the wrong way to deal with it.
No,
It's
whatever
all a learning
works. Yeah.
process. It's all a learning process.
It's so awesome, man. I love watching. It's like watching magic happen to me because I'm as a kid I wanted so badly to be an artist and I just didn't have the skills.
Oh yeah, me either.
But I did a lot of drawing when I was a kid. It wasn't very good, and to see good artists at work, it just looks like magic to me. It just seems like magic.
Well, I'm glad that you feel that way. Sometimes when I'm working, I feel like, oh my gosh, this is just so awful. Like it's not. It doesn't look good. It's not the way I want it to look.
It's a sign
And
that you're good at it, though. That you're
Yeah,
that judgmental about your own stuff.
a divine
well,
dissatisfaction.
it's that's interesting to note that and if there's any other artists, I don't know if there's any artists watching or listening, but it's good to. I always find it encouraging to hear other artists struggle. Not in a gleeful way,
Shouted
but like,
Freude.
yeah, not in like a Adam's Family way, like oh good you're struggling, but it makes that artist human in some ways, because it's like I will take a look. I remember one of the things I remember I was lucky enough to visit the home of Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes. And I saw it was his mother. She granted me an interview a few years ago, and on her wall she had original Calvin and Hobbes art,
Wow.
and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so freaking
Who
awesome.
was Calvin peeing on?
Yeah, Calvin was peeing
And
on
on
all
her
kinds
truck, she also had.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
it was weird. It was the strangest thing. But what was really interesting about that art, and it stayed with me for years, is that there was whiteout on that art, and I'm thinking, really, Bill Watterson actually makes
Yeah.
mistakes? Is that possible? How is that even possible? And but it was edifying for me because I'm like, oh well, even someone as talented as Bill Watterson can make those mistakes, and that's why I like looking at real original art because you can see the thought process behind it, and a lot of that stuff once it gets printed is gone. And so I always encourage artists to to look at original comic art and see the mistakes that their heroes have made, because it just shows that you can make mistakes. It's okay, and you'll still be people still like your stuff. So that's been a struggle, and when you're an artist you spend a lot of time just sort of like critiquing your own things and going over your own artwork as much as possible, and so it's good to have that backing. So what I did here is I just finished the first frame. That's the first frame, and then so that frame is sort of finished. I ended up having there's Michelle, Rob, and Abe are the people there in
Now,
that frame.
the best part of this is that the scene just says Michelle and Abe are arguing, and it says what they're arguing about. So putting Rob in there is a great way to kind of spice that up and show like, oh, the other people in the route, in the area are not. They're kind of done with these two.
Yeah, yeah, and that was interesting because a lot of in the first couple issues, there's a lot of Abe and Michelle kind of going at it, and I found myself when I was drawing it, I'm like, well, how do I show them arguing in a new way,
That's great.
And so at some point, I took the focus off of them and put Rob, who was up to this point in the book has been sort of kind of in the background right now. So I wanted to put him forward, and I think it also was a reason because I think in the next frame, which this is only 3 frames big, uh, I wasn't able to put Rob in it, so this allowed me to do that.
And that's the kind of thing you're talking about earlier, Jeff. Is that Len acting as a director?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
and
it's awesome.
and not only director, but like all the actors too.
Right.
He gets to interpret facial expressions and positioning and where hands are and all that stuff. It's not just where the camera is. It's where all the physical people are too. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's been really um uh a challenge learning these characters. So I was saying I was working on this other comic, and I've been working on that comic for over a year now, and I know the characters so well. So when I jumped into TenState, it was like, okay, I got to learn these. I've learned these characters all over again, and because we had done Tom and I had done a teaser comic, we did that back in February. We had a little bit of a hiatus before whether or not we were going to find out if Tenn
That was
State was going to
Ten
be funded.
Town. That was Ten Town. Was that
No,
right?
no,
No,
no. We
Ten
did.
Town was another project we never got off the ground.
Oh.
But this was he's just talking about from the Kickstarter. We did a teaser, like a 8 page.
Yeah, we had like a 10-page teaser.
Or was it 10?
So yeah, I
Everything's
think it was
10.
10. It was 10. I think it was a 10-page teaser. But but I had done some initial like concept sketches of the characters, but that's all they were. I didn't draw them from different angles and stuff like that. So I was sort of feeling my way through these characters, and really kind of deciding, well, what should be the overlying motivation of this character. What should they feel like? What should the viewer get? And so that's been sort of a struggle. So when you say directing them, it is, there is a little bit of that. I want to make sure that I'm not directing them in any wrong way. Like, I want to make sure that they have some depth to them and things like that. And of sort of Tom's words and everything else help. And we've discussed like how we want the characters to be perceived and things, and
Do
all
some of
kinds
them
of
not take direction well?
a couple of them, yeah, they're kind of prima donnas, they don't really know
Michelle.
how
Yeah.
show. Well, I always end up, I'm drawing right now, I'm drawing Heidi, and Heidi always ends up, she's an interesting character because she's definitely a type, and she's very fretful. And so every time I draw her, I draw her real fretful, or either she's got two extremes, real fretful or real happy. And what's funny about this character of Heidi, is, and I think why I went to her first here while I was drawing the big frame is, or I'm inking this big frame rather, is because this character is based on my sister-in-law.
Is that right? You're outing her?
She looks a lot like my sister-in-law, the first time I drew her, and so I like this familiarity of actually working, drawing someone that I know, sort of helps as I work on
She's
the other
familiar.
characters.
Well, B. Purcell is asking in the chat room if you have sample images near you while you draw, or you just do it from memory.
I am right now doing it from memory, but if it comes to a point where I really, and the only reason I do that, or I'm just doing it by memory, is because of just the time period. Like, um, on any given day, I'll have like 4 or 5 different projects that are kind of sitting waiting for me. So I don't have the luxury of necessarily waiting, and like doing a lot of necessary research and stuff. What I'll do is I'll pull up my other artwork on a separate screen, and I'll sort of reference that to make sure that, oh yeah, she has this kind of hairstyle, or that kind of thing. But right now, everything I'm drawing is from what I've drawn so far from the characters from memory. So
And we did a lot of work. We created a character Bible and wrote up like background sketches. They're this old from this place. This is what their personality is like. This is what they do for a living. These are who their friends are. If they were married, if they had any kids, et cetera, to try to really get to know them before we put them in this situation. Because
That's cool.
otherwise, it could just be 10 people that all kind of act the same.
And 10's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of characters to
yeah,
be jostling around and
trying to
keeping track
remember,
of.
yeah.
Yeah. Are you a reality TV fan, or did you watch reality TV to kind of get some verisimilitude?
I've watched enough.
Yeah, you just by osmosis. We all have, I suppose.
And it's funny because I've watched less of the ensemble Survivor, Amazing Race type shows, which is really what this is more based on, than I have the competition shows like American Idol or The Voice or those kinds of things. Top Chef.
Right.
I think I'm probably drawing a lot from Top Chef because it's the group of people put together in an isolated situation cooking in that case. And then I'm drawing a lot from American Idol as far as the dynamics of selection and are you going to win and all of that sort of thing. And then obviously there's Survivor, Amazing Race type stuff with just people not getting along. Oh, they don't have the solace that they can vote somebody off the island, right?
Yeah,
Once they're the 10, they're the 10. They're locked in.
Yeah. And the tone is interesting too because it's funny, but it's sort of political, right? It's kind of got something to say about differences in socioeconomic breakdown and all that stuff.
Yeah, because when you mentioned Tent Town before, and when Len and I tried that, it was at that nadir of the economy, and the idea was like, well, what would happen if we all just lost all of our stuff, but we still have this technology knowledge, et cetera, and that we just were both really busy and we had a hard time getting that off the ground. So when we circled back and Len called me last November, I was like, let's do something. We were talking about doing something around the divided state of the nation and politics because it was right around election time. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea kicking around probably since high school. I don't remember exactly when, of some kind of reality show or some kind of experiment where you take a low number of people but representative of the demography of either the world or a country, and you see how they get along. And so I threw that out there, and Len's like, well, that's great because we can do it in the United States, and it'll represent all the different political spectrums, et cetera. And we've taken the story and we've run with it from there and developed it a lot. And we've even broken down essentially how it's going to go over 4 seasons.
Oh, cool.
Of 10 issues each-ish. So we know where this is going to end up, and we know what's really going on, and any of the mysteries, including the giraffe that you may have seen in the teaser comic. There is no giraffe, or is there?
Who knows? That's the real mystery, right?
But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to avoid the Lost issue, where they knew where they were going,
right?
But they didn't quite know how they were going to get there. And so when they got there, it was like, oh, well, and we know we left all these other questions, but don't worry, it's a spiritual journey. And I know that's Damon Lindelof's thing, and I respect that. But I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be like, no, we know where we're going, and we're going to have mysteries, but they're going to get answered. And as you answer one, a new one's going to come up in a way that keeps you reading, but doesn't make you feel like, well, wait a minute, what about Peggy back there,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
that's very cool. So is there any? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying this. It's been a real joy to be working on this. I mean, as I'm getting deeper into the story and drawing, I think Tom just sent over a draft for issue 3. I'm starting to really enjoy these characters a lot, and it's just just so exciting. And we're only slated to do 5 of these issues. And I hope that in those 5 that we can really, because there's so much we want to say and so much we want to set up, and so I hope that we're able to be successful in creating a really good mythology for our characters, and hopefully people will want to see more.
Yeah. Is there any hope of going through a kind of traditional publisher at some point?
Definitely not opposed.
Yeah.
It's just all a matter of who would want to do it and whether it would make sense. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm assuming nobody will ever want to be interested. But yeah, if somebody came along and said, "Hey, we want to turn this into something," it would have to meet both of our expectations as far as where we want to go with the story and everything. We wouldn't want to give up control of that, and it would have to make sense financially too.
Right.
Like we were able to do these first 5 issues all on our own, thanks to the generosity of the Kickstarter, which I know you've experienced as well. Mm-hmm. So it kind of gives you this freedom where you're like, well, maybe I don't need the big publisher.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not saying no. I don't know about you, Len.
I don't know. We've talked about it in very vague terms, Tom and I, and like I said, it would have to be something that worked for both of us, but also. I'm just having a lot of fun, and I think Tom is too. I'm speaking for Tom here. I think
definitely.
It's just so much fun to be able to have this opportunity to create this world and these characters, And we've talked in depth, both Tom and I, about these characters and what's going to happen to them, and how we're going to approach this world, and it's there's something about that. Like I guess one of the things that I'm afraid of personally is that, like, well, if this gets picked up by a major publisher, then we would lose some of that control. That we would lose some of what we feel is making this story so unique and special. So so yeah, just to reiterate what Tom was saying, I think it would have to be the right thing. But right now, we're just having a blast. This is, I mean, there are worse ways to spend your day, right? I mean,
Sure, yeah.
I mean, to be able to come up with a full character bio and about each
I
one
get
of
really excited when I get done with a page, and I just want to like run over to Len and go, okay, look at this. What do you think? What do you think? Look what I did to Sylvia. What do you think's gonna? Is that cool? Do you like that? So yeah, it's a blast.
What's your writing process like? Do you write in the morning? Do you write in the evening? Do you have a specific thing? Do you like, today's the day I'm going to write a TenState issue?
Well, I try to write something every day, and so when I'm in the groove of like, like right now I'm between issues, so I'm letting it lie fallow and I'm working on another thing. But when I was working on issue 3, every day I would sit there and I would pump out at least, whether it was a page setup or a page smoothing or finishing, I would try to do 1 page a day, and that's the way I do it. We have all these notes that we've created, so I'll take those and I'll put that out for the entire issue. Like, these things need to happen. Then I'll go through and I'll break that up and to say, I think this should happen on a page and this is a page, until I've got it distributed through the 10 pages. And then I'll go through and I'll kind of look at each page and go, okay, this conceivably, Len could conceivably draw this in a page. So yes, this is the order of events and this is what will happen. And I do that to kind of make sure everything's right. And sometimes that means shifting some things around. And then I'll go in and I'll write a draft for each page that says these people will say this and do this. And then the final pass through is going through each page and saying, okay, now I have to make it a panel. This is going to happen in this panel, like really assign things. That way I can focus on the requirements of each part of that process rather than trying to do it all at once. I've read about people who are like, oh, I go through and I write panel 1, this happens. Panel 2, this happens.
Right.
And that's more how I write when I write novels or fiction or short stories, is I just go for it. But with this, I'm trying to make sure it fits the format well. And Len's been really good about giving me feedback of like, well, this is too much or this isn't enough, or and so getting that rhythm right is really important. It's not just about the story. For instance, a page like this where you've got, a challenge dropping in, the backstory that I had written was like paragraphs and paragraphs long. But I'll go through and I'll just like extract like, well, these are the important things that need to happen to get the story across. Let's let the visuals tell it.
That's awesome. Do you think that this is a medium that was suited for this particular story, or do you think that you're now sort of falling in love with this medium and you want to do more comic book stuff?
I didn't particularly think this medium was bad or good for the story itself. It sounded like something Len thought he could draw, so that was good enough for me.
Right.
I just kind of relied on him for that. But definitely, I would like to do more stuff like this. It's really fun because it feels like writing for television,
right,
without having the pressure, deadline, etc. of writing for television.
When you're writing, in your head and you're visualizing the scene as it happens, do you visualize it with Len's art, or do you visualize it with like real people, or how does it work in your mind?
We wrote character sketches. The first time I wrote the character sketches, I didn't have Len's art, and then Len created the actual sketches of each character, and so that gave me like, oh, Rob looks a little different than I thought, but I get it. I get where he's going. Most of them looked pretty close to what I was thinking. And so from then on, it's always been his art. Like, okay, that's what Michelle looks like, and that's what she does. Or this is the style that I think, Len could do a really good thing with this kind of panoramic, like cross the page panel. Yeah. I definitely am trying to write to the video.
Yeah.
So to speak.
I read, I'm a big comic book fan, and I read, things that Bendis writes and stuff that where he's like, I get the happiest day is when I get the art back, and I see. I can only imagine when you write something and it comes back and it's like someone added to your idea. Like your idea is still there, but they added their stuff to your idea too.
Oh yeah.
It must be so cool.
There's a boar that comes in at the end of issue 1 that wasn't in the teaser, and in my head it's like little prancy boar comes
Dude, that
charging in,
splash page
right?
image, I just looked at it. It's so
Oh
great.
man,
Yeah.
I was like, that is a million times better than I had imagined. The way Len drew it, it was amazing.
Yeah, I was struck by
I'm
that.
scared of that boar now. I don't want to look at that page. It's gonna kill me.
It's one of my favorite moments from issue 1. That is just such a I needed. I felt like, and that was the cool thing, is that, like, there's this, and you know this, Jeff, from reading comics. There's a certain cadence when you start reading a comic, like, and it felt like, oh, this is time. We needed to do this really big thing, and so I saw this opportunity, and I took that, and it was just, it's so cool. I can't wait till everybody can see that. We should note that as soon we're working on issue 2, and what Tom and I want to do is get issue 1 and 2 out at the same time. So people will be getting issue 1 and 2, so they'll feel like they'll have like a big, like a nice big chunk to kind of tide them over for a little bit. And hopefully, if we do our job right, there will be enough questions from issue 2 that will keep people rolling, and into issue 3 and everything. So
yeah, issue 1 will have, what is it, 4 extra pages that weren't in the teaser, and some.
I think actually there's five or 6 pages.
Oh, is it really? Is it 5?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It ended up being a little more. I think we broke it up into.
Oh, that's right, because we did break up one page, and that'll happen sometimes where I'll write a page, and Len's like, I really want to do more with this panel. Can we break it up into 2 to give me a little more space? And that works out fine. And that's the nice thing about doing this digitally. We can do that.
Yeah.
We don't have to be like, nope, it's 10 pages or it's 12 pages. Like we could be a little fast and loose sometimes.
That's cool. Are you guys doing is it Photoshop for lettering as well, or how does the lettering work?
Yes. And once again, it's been like a trial by fire for me on all these things, because when I started working, my love for working on comics really started last year when I started working on this comic with Bill, and I couldn't get enough. I just wanted to do more. Which, to answer your question, is a little bit like, I know Tom didn't really think of this as a comic book per se, but I was just so hungry for that, right? And I'm doing for better or for worse, I'm doing everything. I'm doing the lettering, I'm doing the inking, I'm doing the coloring on TenState's a black and white comic, but I'm doing the coloring on the other comic, and it's always a challenge, I mean, I'm learning new things, and I'm learning different tricks and stuff like that to make the lettering happen. And what I've learned mostly about the lettering, and I use both Illustrator and Photoshop for the lettering, is that, I used to think that, like, the letterer, what does this guy do, man? All he does is just kind of, what's his job really, and it's really amazing to me, after having done it, is I'm realizing, and looking at other comics too, and seeing how the letterer there's such an artistic flair with lettering, and trying to find the right font for different things, and there is so much thought that goes into it, because when I get to that point, when I get to the lettering point, there's a really good feeling. I always, I equate, like, when I'm working on a page, I try to do one page at a time. I try to do everything from the inks to the pencils to the lettering, all in kind of one sitting, or as close to one sitting as I can. We won't do that tonight, because I know that just takes way too long. But I used to think it was just, we're just putting words on a page, and there's so much more. And when I'm working on the lettering, I feel like I equate it to going on a long road trip. And when you're coming back from that road trip, and you start seeing signs that all, like, oh, this is like about 20 miles away from my house, we're almost there. You know what I mean? That's sort of the feeling I get when I start working on the lettering, because we're so close to the end of the page, but so far, just like on a trip, you may see some signs that are like, oh, this is so close to home, but you're usually like a lot farther than you think you are. Yeah. and that's sort of the feeling I get when I'm working on the lettering, is that it's end moment. We're closing in on some on the end of the page, but there is still some finesse to do. There's still some more finesse work, and that finesse work is working on the lettering. I guess I didn't have much respect for letterers
Yeah, you just figure it's a
until
guy
I
with good penmanship, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, what does it
You
take?
draw a balloon and
well
you write some
no I
words in
mean
it.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
the letterers they're all digital now, so I'm thinking
Yeah.
even that it's like, well, you guys, what the heck, you're just you're putting everything in through a font
Well,
and,
and that was
and
the big
whatever.
thing that surprised me when we were working on the teaser. And I was like, well, can you do this with the balloon? And you're like, I only have so many balloons. He's like, I can hand draw it, I guess, but that takes a lot of time. I'm like, wow, I never even thought about
Yeah.
like the
Balloon
balloon.
shortage of 2015.
Exactly.
Well, no, actually, that discussion sort of made me look and like, well, I guess I can make my own balloons, right? And so like it was, I was like, that in itself, and I'm still struggling with that, like making the right size balloon, or making the balloon look like it should, or fit the words correctly, and literally, like, it's so funny. I mean, like I said, like at the end of a page, you just want to be done with it and you just want to put the words on. But sometimes it takes me like 2 hours just to letter a page, just because you want to get that, you want to lead the eye, you want to make sure that it
Right.
feels right, and it can be frustrating.
When you're composing a
Really frustrating.
panel, are you already thinking about where the word balloons are going to be?
Yes, yes. I try to draw in where I think it should go, just visually, because I'm trying to envision what the page looks like as a whole.
Hmm.
So the best comics, I feel, are the ones that feel like a movie, and really lead your eye. And so in order to do that, you really have to plan out how the page is gonna look, um, from an aesthetic point of view. And that's where we start with the roughs on these, is that we really gotta make sure that it looks like a nice page that you want to delve into and read, and there's just a little bit of planning that goes involved in it. So
And when you've got this
um
annoying writer who's like giving you 20 times as much dialogue as you can
Yeah.
fit.
oh no, that's like, I think that's just in general, I mean, that's, writer, I'm used to working, trying to get as much in as possible, and I'm getting a little bit better. Sometimes it gets a little bit crowded with the words, but other than that, I mean, I think we're making it work.
I think you always do a
Um,
good job. It always ends up looking natural to me anyway.
well, I'm glad to hear that.
And
I hope it
honestly, I just
does.
wouldn't say anything right now if I didn't believe that.
Well, writers,
I'd passively aggressively send you an email later.
you should really respect my words.
No, that's been the great thing is discovering that working with Len this closely is easy, right? Because that can be really prickly.
Yeah.
Where somebody's like, "Wait a minute, you took a line out of
Yeah.
what? Why did you take this? This is the most important line ever because I wrote it."
Right.
Or vice versa. Him saying like, "What do you mean Heidi should be over on the other side of the panels?
Yeah.
I put her there for a purpose." And we haven't had that relationship. It's been very, very much respectful but good give and take. Just trying to make it better, and it's that is lucky. I think I feel extremely lucky.
Man, I am jamming through this page here. I don't know why it's usually maybe I'm not paying attention, like how quickly I work, but I'm like surprised how quickly this page is getting inked.
If you were, I mean, you may have done this lots, but if you were giving advice to young artists who want to get into drawing comic books, what do you think would be the biggest thing to focus on, or
The biggest thing to focus on is just to be like is to draw every day. Draw. I used to teach classes. I used to teach cartooning classes, and I will be teaching cartooning classes again this summer. But my one piece of advice is, or actually, I have two pieces of advice. One piece of advice is to draw. You just got to draw every day, and it doesn't matter what you're drawing. You just got to be drawing. If you want to get better at drawing, you got to do that. Whether you're drawing comics, whether you're drawing fantasy art, whatever, just make sure you're drawing. The second thing is, if you want to draw, just anything, take as many life drawing classes as you can. Take a lot. Always be able to draw people. Go out and go to the park and just draw people from afar, and don't worry about making it perfect. Just worry about um, trying to get the shapes down and everything. But life drawing classes in general are great because life drawing teaches you the rules, and once you know the rules, you can kind of break the rules. So, but you got to teach yourself the rules. So my advice is draw every day, take a lot of life drawing classes, and keep learning. That's the other thing. Like, never rest on your laurels. Never say, oh, I've done a lot. I've done, I'm the best artist there is. Um, I don't need to learn anymore, which is absolutely untrue. You can always learn from other people, and learn new techniques and things that are going to make your art better. So never stop trying to make yourself better and learn, um, because you can. I'm still learning stuff every single day, and it just surprises me, um, how much I've learned even in the past year from doing comics.
And
So we're
Tom, it sounds like you have the same kind of motto. I mean, it's so inspiring to hear you say that you write every day. You're such a busy guy with so many projects, and yet you write what, basically for yourself every day.
Well, all of the Sword and Laser authors, when we interview them, we ask them, "What's your advice for new writers?" And they all say, "Write every day."
Yeah.
Like 99% of the time, that is one of their pieces of advice. So yeah, starting this year in January, I just put it on my to-do list: write or edit something every day. So take out that NaNoWriMo thing and start reworking it, or write a blog post, or work on 10. Like, once we started doing TenState, I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I'll work on that. And it is like all of the successful authors have that same advice. And I feel like it goes back to that 10,000 hours rule of, like, you just have to put in the time. And then, yes, it's good to have talent, and you need to try, but half the progress is just doing it till you get good at it.
Yeah. That's such an inspiring thing. It's really cool.
And I'm at 500 or so hours, so
Yeah, you're
getting there.
getting there. Yeah.
So,
But I mean, most of
for your NaNoWriMo thing?
9,900. No, for my 10,000 hours of experience,
Oh,
that will make me an expert.
I think it's all downhill from here, really. First 500 is the hard part.
That's really the
Yeah.
hill. Once you get over that,
It's a long
good.
downhill slope.
Oh, it's all coasting.
But most of the stuff you write, is it just not even intended? It's just to fulfill your soul, or are you? I mean, do you have ambition to be a, published writer?
Yeah, sure. I would like to write something that I felt was good enough to send to a publisher and say, hey, I think this is worth considering. And even then, I would expect to get rejected a bunch of times, because I've heard so many good things that have gotten rejected.
Right.
But what I do now is I just like other people to read it and tell me what they think, because that helps me improve, especially if they're giving me criticisms. I wrote a novel in the 90s that I just printed out and handed out to friends, and was like, tell me what you think. Tell me what you think's wrong with it. And that, I would take that back and try to get better. So yeah, it's a fun for me to create stories, and I want to get better at creating better stories.
That's great. That's really cool.
And thankfully, Len let me play in his playground here.
Oh, this is a blast. So much fun.
These characters are becoming friends too. Like
Friends to us?
Yeah. Like, well, maybe not best friends, like you'd want them over for dinner, especially not Carlos, but the kind of, like, I'm getting familiar with them, so I don't even have to think anymore. When I look, I'm like, immediately I see a face and I know that's Heidi, or I know that's Rob, or I know that's Sylvia poking up over the edge of the frame there.
Yeah, the one of the characters that plays pretty heavily in issue 2 is the character Renee, and I didn't really know what to think about him. I liked him, and it seemed to be like, when we beta tested and beta read the original ones, like the teaser, people really seemed to like Renee. I didn't really know what to think about him. As I've drawn him, and as I've kind of got into his story, I'm like, I love this character.
Uh-huh.
I think he's just so cool. There's something about him that's so awesome, and and I think out of all the characters, I'm sort of like leaning toward him, just because I think he's sort of
You've got a favorite?
I
You
kind of
favoring
do.
Renee?
I kind of do. I did a page earlier today.
Carlos is gonna cut you.
I did a page earlier today with Renee, and I had kind of been looking forward to drawing it. There were some really cool
Uh,
facial features and things like that. And I'm like, this is just a cool scene. This dude is a cool dude. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I like him. And like I guess once I start spending a little more time with some of the other characters and them getting past just
well,
real
we're
initial
doing
stories.
flashbacks. Starting in issue 2, we're doing flashbacks for 2 characters in issue.
Oh, cool.
So you get a little more about how they ended up getting into this television show.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so you start seeing a little bit more about them, which is more in depth. And
Sorry, I got a text.
Highly unprofessional.
We'll edit this out of the DVD commentary when it goes to the Smithsonian.
yeah, these this was interesting too because um I I hadn't done this before on my other project, which was Bill would send me a page of the comic every other day, and so I wouldn't be able to see what's going to happen next. But with TenState, Tom gives me the whole script, and and uh, and so I did all the pencils all at once just to kind of keep consistency. And so I haven't visited these pencils in a little while,
Hmm.
but it's fun. It's really cool because there's this, like, here I'm drawing Antoine, and there's this really cool energy that's coming out of this that I really
You used to really like Antoine the most, it felt like.
I did.
Kind
I
of
thought
fickle.
that I thought that he was the guy I could kind of, kind of like lean on. But as I'm learning about some of these other characters, I really I think there's some cool stuff going on with them. So I'm excited to hear what people have to say about them once they start really learning about these characters.
Hey,
There's some
Len,
really
do you approach the inks differently for a black and white comic or a color comic?
Um, yes. Uh, I I think I am a little bit more looser in black and white, because I know that there's not another layer going on top of it. I mean, there is a color layer, and I call it the wash layer, which is basically just it's just a black and white wash. And I but I know that I have to tell most of the story through the inking. Um, so I spend a little bit more time kind of um, uh, just kind of crafting and making sure that the inks, the black and white, look good, as opposed to when I'm working on like with Bill's comic. uh, I know there's going to be another layer there. I know there's going to be a layer of color that's going to help me continue telling the story. So the consequently the inks aren't as what I would, maybe as tight as they possibly could be, because there's things I can do with color. So yeah, I think I do approach it a little bit differently um, than would normally do. Now I'm going to blow your mind here. I'm going to turn
Whoa!
this. Hold on,
Antoine,
folks. I'm going to
Antoine's
blow your
getting
mind.
dizzy.
This is a yeah.
By the way, Cellpest just caught my eye with a chat room question. Does Photoshop autosave?
No, no. I saw that question.
Yeah.
Have I ever lost anything? Yes, I have. But
Oh,
luckily, I'm
that's
pretty
awful.
good about saving my work. Um, and this is interesting.
Shouldn't it autosave?
It should.
Okay.
I don't know. That should be the next layer. That should be the next version. Um, but yeah, what I just did there was I what's really great of working on a Cintiq is that, as opposed to taking like an 11 by 17 piece of Bristol board and turning it and doing that, there's like a little effect here. There's a little tool that lets you just turn the entire page over to the side, as well as the Cintiq, which you cannot see because it's just,
Oh, so you turned the
it's
Cintiq too.
I turn the Cintiq and
Nice.
I turn it. So
Huh.
I have that level of control of where I want the lines to go. So right now, this is the page. This is essentially what the page is going to look like when it's done. Um, that was an inking session, dude. That was
Wow.
less than an hour.
That was rock and roll, man.
And you were
Rock
like
star.
talking the whole time and just killing it while inking. Like it must be two different parts of your brain.
It was hard. It was hard to do.
Was it okay? Because you
it was
made
a
it
little
look
hard.
easy.
We should have been asking him math problems the whole time.
Well, now see,
So Avogadro's number.
well, we have about, let's say, like, I'll just clean up the last 10 minutes, and just make sure this looks tight. But essentially, this is what an inked page will look like. Um, uh, and I'll go in and I'll clean it up and add a couple more details here and there. And then the next phase of this is just adding like color and shading and everything else, and then the last part is the words. So hopefully by tomorrow we'll have a new page ready to go, ready to move on to page 4. But I'm gonna if you guys want to take some more questions, maybe we can just take it to 9 o'clock, and then we can
Yeah, there's a
just
few
save
questions in the chat room we could take a plug at. And B. Purcell was asking, do we know how the story is going to end, or are you discovering it as you write? We know how it's going to end. We don't know exactly how it's going to end, but we know what happens at the end. So it's not something that is in doubt. We don't know every single detail because we haven't written the scenes.
Yeah.
But we know.
we have a direction.
Yeah, exactly. And then, have you ever used fonts or lettering from Comic Craft? PJ Less wants to know.
I have not. No, the fonts I use, the main font I use for TenState is a font called Jack Armstrong, which I actually got from
Jack
Armstrong. Thank
from
you.
Jack Armstrong. No, it's from Blambot. I think Blambot. That's where I got it from. And what's cool about the and I paid for it. It wasn't a free font because it has some really cool bold and italic, and it gives you some options and stuff like that, so you can make it look cool. It's as opposed to just having like a uppercase simple version. So yeah, it's a really good font, but I've never used that. I'm always on the lookout for new fonts though. So
I'm looking for the next question. Do you see one, Jeff? I am going to. How long does it take to master drawing expressions?
forever. I'm still mastering expressions. It's funny. You should I'm always afraid like that.
Poor Judy. She just does not look happy there. Speaking of
She looks
expressions.
sad. And I'm always afraid that like they're always have the same kind of expression, and so
I was trying
I'm
to think of
always
drawing expressions. Like, well, erase my hand. How long does it take to master drawing expressions?
Ink my hair.
ink my hair.
A lifetime to master those.
I have definitely not mastered that.
No.
Perfect.
There's another question. Have you ever had dreams of putting yourself in the story? That was B. Purcell.
I haven't had dreams yet of this. I have had dreams when I'm working on other stories, like intensely, like during NaNoWriMo, where I dream about the story, but not of this one yet. And I can't.
Oh, that put yourself in the story.
I have to
said
say,
it incorrectly.
I never have dreamt that I was particularly in the story either. I guess I'm guessing what his question meant.
I think you were right. I think I misread it.
Usually it's like I'm watching the story if I dream about a story like that. I have dreamt a reorg of the Tech TV web staff once.
Hilarious.
Like I woke up in the morning, I'm like, that is how we should organize the department. And I wrote it down, and that's what we did. And it worked really well. And I dreamt a podcast forecast that I did with Scott Johnson. I just dreamt that we were doing the show. And then I was like, hey, I had this weird dream of we were doing this kind of show. And Scott's like, let's do it. So we did it for a couple of years. It was fun. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I don't know. You're a machine, Len.
Yeah, I am. I'm almost done here. I'm just gonna drop what the main colors of the pages are gonna be, and I think we can actually maybe call it a night here.
So when you say you do a color wash, is that like shading?
Yes, I can actually do that real quick and just kind of show you what I do. Um, so right, so what I do now is I create these little. I'm this is how organized I am. Um, each frame gets its own Photoshop folder, right? So like, so I can go back to if like say you come back and say, you know what, I don't really like the way that looks. Or his Antoine's arms look weird or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
I can actually go into that particular frame, change what's in that frame, and just it's all organized, so it sort of just kind of makes uh, it all makes sense. So I look at each frame as like a, a separate piece of art. So let's say I'm doing this last frame. Let's do that. So this frame with Antoine, who's yelling something. You can see what I've done is I've put like a little background on him. Uh,
Should I say what he's yelling? Or
no,
would that be a
no.
spoiler? I guess that's a spoiler.
I don't know. I don't even remember what he's yelling. Oh yes, it is a spoiler. We can't
I
we
guess
can't.
that's a spoiler.
That's a spoiler.
The first word he's yelling is find.
Yeah. So then what I do real quickly is I just outline the main character. I usually create a layer called figs, which means figures, and then I just outline it and I drop the color in like this. So now just real quickly I've made him separated from the background. And then I lock off that layer, color layer, and then this is when I start painting. So let's see, I have a brush. This is a brush I got from another artist by the name of Megan Lara, who I'm a huge fan of. Megan is she's an awesome artist. She does all these she does a lot of like fan art, like community, like she did community fan art, and she did Doctor Who fan art and stuff. She's just this really super talented artist. Does covers for Dark Horse and Buffy, and like I think she did a cover for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But I was like, how do you what are your tools? And if you're cool with other artists, they'll give you like their tricks of the trade. And she gave me this awesome brush pack, which included this cool brush, which was actually a brush that is used to paint hair, but it's so versatile, and when you take it down to a little bit smaller, it just gives you this really cool paintbrushy type look. And so that's what I've been doing most of my shading with is this, and coloring is was this cool looking.
Your job is hard.
What this one?
Yeah. I could never do this.
Me neither. I wish.
It's a lot. You know what? I sometimes I feel like I can't do it. Like I'll be like, oh man, that looks so bad. But
No, you did
terrible.
great.
So so yeah, so I just dropped that in, and just in that little short amount of time, I've created depth. I've created
Yeah.
lighting, and
Drama too. There's drama in that shading, you know?
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I've created a just a total feel for what's happening in that scene that sets it up.
So when I use the
So
little circle in Photoshop, that's
That's not a
the
brush.
problem,
That's not a
right?
brush.
That's
That's not the brush that what's her name would have sent you.
um no, it's so funny because I have like a whole it's it's funny. I talk to different artists about like what they use to do like painting and stuff. Like, well, I only use one brush, and I'm thinking I don't really believe
How do you
that
do that?
because maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I think that I have so many brushes that I choose from and that do certain things and make things, um, have different effects and stuff like that. Um, that I don't believe that people just use one brush. I don't. I mean, I maybe that's just the way I work. So, but then what I do just real quickly, I take then the background. I do some effects to the background, and well, if that was a mistake, we'll take it down like to 40% and just add like a
Ah,
little bit of shading there
yeah,
to
yeah.
kind of break it up. And then
Because you're the lighting director too.
yeah, that's the other
Yeah.
cool thing is being able to do some cool stuff like that. And then the final thing I do on all the frames, just like I treat each frame as like a separate piece of art. Um, I just run like a little effect brush on it to give some some effect to it. And then
Splatter.
there's a finished frame from TenState.
It's
So
awesome.
let's pull you back there. And so now the only thing that would be left on there is would be adding Tom's words and making the whole thing work. Oh, what the heck happened? I lost that.
You
Oh, there
also-
it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's behind something. Challenge.
Yeah, so there we go. And then I think I'll add.
I imagine that being the same voice that says, "Finish him."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I thought it was that too.
Yeah, totally.
New challenge.
So yeah, so that's essentially I do this
challenge. We should do new
That-
challenge at some point.
new challenge, a new challenger.
That's a good idea.
So that's basically the process, guys. I mean, that's essentially it.
And he's doing this all with Google Glass.
Isn't
This
that
was all voice commands.
He's just moving his eyes.
So that's essentially it. That's the page.
Sweet.
Very
So
impressive.
we'll try to do at least one from every issue if we can, and I'll try to pick like an easy page like this, which to ink and which won't take that super long. But that's it.
Cool.
Dude, it's so much fun to watch. Really cocool.
Well, thanks. Thanks for coming and hanging out with
Oh,
us.
it's my
Jeff.
pleasure. Absolutely fun. Like I
Appreciate
said,
it.
it's like watching magic happen. So I love it.
Don't you got? I saw your video today actually with the update. You got the cube.
Yeah, I
for
got
your
the cube.
show for
The cube lives.
Yeah.
yeah. It's when we shot the pilot yesterday, and I mean it's far from done, but moving right along.
So if people want to keep up on you, just as a side note,
Well, the easy thing to do is Twitter.
Twitter.
At Jeff Canada with 2 N's and 1 T.
2 N's 1 T, not 2 R's 2 T's, 2 N's 1 T. So thanks you guys for backing us too. Super appreciate that, and for spending an hour on Ustream hanging out with us is awesome.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You guys, the comic looks so great, and I have already had a chance to read issues 1 and 2, and you guys are in for a treat. I'll tell you that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording. We'll see you later, folks.
Bye.